Welcome to another episode of Culture Aid podcast brought to you by Izini, your trusted partner in building thriving workplace cultures. Here we explore the intricate and dynamic world of organization culture, uncovering insights and strategies to help leaders and teams foster environments where people and business can grow together. Today we are talking with Victor Jacques, founder of VAJ Design. Welcome to the podcast, Victor. It's an honor to host you on the podcast today.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate you having me on.
Absolutely. Tell us a little about VAJ Design.
Sure. So VAJ Design, we are a full service done-for-you design agency. So we essentially serve as the dedicated design team for our clients. So if they don't have a full-time designer and developer on staff already, then we can basically fill the role and do all of their design work for their conferences, their offers, their courses, anything that they have going on an ongoing and proactive basis.
Fantastic. Looks like I'll probably, hopefully, as I grow, I'll come back and get to talk to you about designing stuff for me, because I have such requirements like LinkedIn carousel posts for my podcast art and so on and so forth. So even my web design, I suppose you help in on those as well.
Yep, absolutely. Yes, so our team, we have designers and developers as well. So folks, they can design and build websites, large scale web applications, mobile apps. So anything that needs to be built out, we can do.
Awesome. Thank you. Well, so before we deep dive into your views about organization culture, I would like to ask you a question so that our audience can get to know you better. What was your very first job?
My very, very first job was bussing tables, actually. There was a catering company that was around the corner from where I grew up. And I believe I was 15 at the time when I decided, I need to, it's about that time I start making my own money so I could stop pestering my parents. So, I went, I applied, I got a job, and that was my first experience really having a job.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Fascinating. I have a daughter who's 15, and in fact, today is going to be a date where she's going to go for an interview as well.
Oh, nice.
And same reason, she does not want to pester the parents to get money, and so she's looking to be independent. So great, awesome.
Yeah.
I like that about the American culture that the kids have. I didn't grow up over here, but the kids have the opportunity to earn their own cash and become responsible in handling that. Awesome, fantastic. Thank you. So if you deep dive into the organizational culture views, what are the top 3 elements that define your organization culture, and how do these elements influence your company's success?
Sure. So I would say probably one of the top elements is flexibility. And so for us, as a design agency, obviously most of us are creatives, and creatives often, not all the time, but sometimes are more creative than they are, structured when it comes to, working within a fixed and rigid process. So, I try to make sure that, I provide a nice balance where we can get the things done that we need to get done, but also leave it flexible enough where they can, I leave them enough flexibility to be creative in their process, flexible with their time, being able to say, hey, I can pick this up, or I won't be available to get this done in time. I could use a little extra support doing this, and all of those type of things. So, I really try to, make sure that we are, as flexible as we can be. That is definitely one of the most, one of the biggest things for us. The other thing is openness. And so, I always leave the door open for my team to reach out and let me know any of their thoughts or concerns, whether it has to do with process, whether it has to do with our projects, whether it has to do with the team, really, anything. I try to minimize, uh, formal formal processes as much as possible to really leave it as close to, kind of a organic, semi-casual type of environment and relationship as possible,
Right.
obviously without compromising professionalism for our
Of
client.
course.
And then
Right.
the third thing I would say is structure. And obviously there has to be. I got to strike a balance between those three, because when you have openness and flexibility, sometimes too much of that can compromise structure, and too much structure can compromise flexibility and openness. So there's definitely a balance there.
Right.
But structure is definitely a big thing that I make sure that we have as well, particularly with our with certain elements of our process. And when you have an agency where different creatives may be sharing work, they have to be able to bounce in and out of projects to be able to pick up where another one left off. It's important that everyone knows exactly where to find things. They know how things are organized. They know how things are named. They know how maybe files might be set up. They are familiar with best practices and how to work within certain software, so that when someone else comes in, it's not like, oh well, this is a hot mess. The better way to work would have been this way, et cetera, et cetera. So that's a big thing. But again, it's a delicate balance between that and the other two.
I like it. I'll be honest with you. I'm listening to you, and all sorts of thoughts are going in my head. You mentioned flexibility. The That's a big, huge ask from the workforce today. People do want flexibility in their lives to be able to do work at the time that they're most creative at, as you mentioned. Of course, taking into consideration the openness that you provide, the fact that they are aware of the timelines that might be in place for the project. So that openness is there. The openness also, I think it's almost like two birds in the one stone. The fact that you've got openness for approach as well as the transparency aspect in built into your processes and in your conversations, which is great. And overall, I would say the umbrella I would say of work that you've got, I can see everything about your organization to be more agile. You're very agile in the way you're working. You have structure. There is balance. Obviously, balance is required for. It's almost like instructions to give a clear aspect of how to get the work done. But there is flexibility to when the work gets done, obviously also in how the work is getting done, but there is structure available. So that is fantastic. Thank you.
Absolutely. Yep. And one thing I wanted to add to when you brought up agile, that's one of the things that, in my experience, I found is really not just the best way, but almost the only way to work in this type of industry. Because when we're, especially for larger projects, right? Like if we are building a large scale web application or mobile application that might have like a 12 or 18-month timeline,
Hmm.
you know, the company doesn't want to wait that long for that thing to be out there in the marketplace. So, we really have to work in a phased approach. We're like, okay, at the end of this 12 or 18 months, everything will be live, but the first 6 months we will have this like a streamlined MVP version of it that is out there, and we're going to continue to build and iterate off of that. And when you work in a if you're working in a phased approach, I mean, you're inherently agile is essentially the way that
Fantastic. Yes, absolutely. And at EasyNE, we are also into helping organizations be more agile. We're focused on helping organizations in agile transformations. And you said it very well. The complexity of today's world, not just in your industry, in every industry, the complexity is such that it requires you to be more very agile and be able to adapt to new circumstances, new situations, new information. So the example that you gave is very good. It's within the first few months, we are going to be very agile and give you the minimum viable product.
Yep.
And you're going to start to iterate on top of it because your requirements might change, your insights might change, your market might change completely.
Absolutely.
And so you have to be agile today.
Absolutely.
Awesome. So can you share a quick example of a recent culture initiative and its impact?
Sure. So one-on-one syncs. And uh, if, full transparency, I've had them in place, but I haven't really really scheduled them as much as 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 I could have. But I found that even when I wasn't doing them as much as I could have before, they're more a frequent part of our process now. But even when I wasn't doing them as much before, it was still just an incredibly valuable thing to have, because it really helps the team understand that their feedback is valued, and you really want to make sure, not to get too much off on a tangent, but when I've worked in corporate for a good maybe 15 years or so in a few different industries and companies. And I worked in a small tech startup, and I worked for like a multi-billion-dollar corporation, and
Mhm.
they're very, very different work environments, right? And those smaller, that small startup type of vibe, you really, um, everybody knows each other's names. We wear multiple hats. There's more responsibility. We're more. Everybody is more important to the organization than when you work for a really, really large corporation like that. Not to knock large corporations, because there's definitely benefits to those as well. But
Yes.
but that type of culture, when you have a small team like that, I think it's you got to make sure that you know you got to make sure the team understands that your thoughts, your opinions are valuable. The processes that we have, those are always in a state of improvement, state of change, and so their feedback for those type of things is important. It's not just me saying, okay, this is what we were doing. Now this is what we are doing, and it doesn't matter what you think about it. It is what it is, right? Like their thoughts, their opinions, their feedback is very, very important. So we have integrated those more frequently, and actually in a series of those right now, I've gotten through maybe three-quarters of the team, and I still have a couple more to do. And always, I mean, new ideas even come from those. You're having a one-on-one, and somebody's giving you their thoughts, and you might learn something about a particular project. Like, oh, during this project would have helped a little bit more is if X, Y, and Z. And you're like, oh, yeah, that's a good idea. I didn't even realize that was a. I didn't even realize that was an issue. So it's just it's. Yeah, I find it very, very important.
You've hit upon so many points in one conversation topic in itself, right? One-on-ones are great for innovation, are great for building that relationship that you have with your subordinates, and the fact that they get the buy-in to the change in the organization's success or the path that it's on.
Absolutely.
So that is very powerful stuff. Great. Um, so so what is one major challenge you faced regarding the organization culture, and how did you overcome it?
Sure. So I would say one of the biggest challenges is along the lines of what I mentioned before about striking that balance between, having that openness and flexibility and structure.
Mhm.
Because, like I said, if you have too much openness and flexibility, it can compromise structure, and too much structure can compromise flexibility and openness. So, I would say that that's probably been one of the biggest challenges, and it's an ongoing. It's not something that I have fully solved, I would say, but I continue to um, make progress,
Hmm.
kind of in that area. Some of the things that we implemented were SOPs. SOPs just really kind of making sure that we have like a documentation for our process that's very structured, but again, it leaves room for flexibility and openness, and uh, and make sure that everyone gets eyes on it, signs off on it, and again can provide feedback on it because maybe the SOP needs to be modified, needs to be reworked. So there's always opportunity for that. But having those processes there and structured, and getting the team to buy in and sign off on it, say, heck, yes, I did see this. I think this makes sense, and I'm down for incorporating this into the workflow moving forward.
Very powerful. And yeah, I'm absolutely with you. Flexibility and structure. There's a need to balance, and you wouldn't become an expert in one day. It takes time. The SOP part is very, very strong in itself as well, because while we are not looking to be strictly adhering to SOP, as what you've mentioned as well, that no, we don't really necessarily stick to the SOP, but it's there. It's a way. So if you tell me how to do my job, if you've given me instructions on what I need to do, it makes my life easier. It allows me to be able to do my job and learn from the way that people have already learned. It's almost like the genes of the company, the DNA of the organization, right? So that is a pretty powerful way of bringing structure and yet being flexible, because you're giving that message to the team. We're not rigid, but this is the way to do about it. And then, as you said, once you operate, the folks who are out there doing the work, they've got the maximum insight in terms of the value that is being created. And now the market is changing, and so the SOP might need to change.
Absolutely.
Great. All right. What is the one trend that you see shaping the future of organization cultures?
Um, I would say definitely remote work. Um, Obviously that has become a much more prevalent thing since COVID. Um, and I've been even towards the tail end of my career in corporate. I had transitioned to a remote employee then, and then when I started my agency, that was fully remote. We're fully remote. I don't have an office location at all. Obviously there's some challenges to being fully remote. It's hard to make sure that you have everyone feeling like they're a team. Collaboration can be a little bit more challenging. And in a creative space, collaboration is important. But for us, we're fortunate, especially the industry that we're in, because the vast majority of what we produce can be delivered virtually. I mean, if we're designing and building a website or a mobile app, you don't need to be physically in the room with somebody to deliver that for them. That is being uploaded online for to be available and access to everyone. And even physical materials that we do, right? I mean, if a company is doing maybe they're hosting a conference, and so um, they need like digital assets for promoting it online and a landing page for people to register and all of that. They also will need, banners and
Yeah,
maybe like wall
for sure.
graphics and like, different promotional materials and handouts and various physical things, merchandise, giveaways, all type of stuff like that.
Yeah.
Even when it comes to those things we can handle remotely. For the most part. I mean, there's some exceptions, but we have a number of vendors that we work through that produce all those type of things. So we design it, we get client sign off, we get those things produced, and we just have them shipped to whatever location they need, whether it's to their office or to the actual venue itself. So for us, being because of the industry that we're in, being remote, uh, thankfully, isn't
Yes.
isn't 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 too much of a challenge for us. Now, if we were a construction company or something like that, where you got uh, you know everything is done like right there on site, that's a whole other thing. But fortunately for us, we're able to ride this trend.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I'm with you on this remote culture. As I myself, COVID really had nothing on me or my organization that we were working in. And we were a remote, 100% remote, 3, 4 years before COVID had hit.
Mm.
And so when I started my consulting, again, I'm not grown in terms of the team size, but it is 100% remote company. It is going to be 100% remote. And like you said, there are going to be challenges all the time in every aspect, but these are challenges that you can mitigate because of the industry that we are in, and the technology has reached that far
Yes,
where you can do whatever work you can 100% remote. You don't have to. You can always have get-togethers in with the team once in a month or something, where you're going out when you're not really working, and maybe or even like offsite training or where you're mixing the sort of connection as well as business together, right? Becoming a team together. So those are obviously always there. In fact, you also have the opportunity as people are adults. If they wanted to work together, they have the flexibility. Yes, hey, Victor, I want to come set up and discuss about this new banner that we have to create. Let's go grab a coffee and then we'll discuss about it. All is possible, right?
absolutely, absolutely.
Plus, with remote, the biggest one of the big advantages that talent is everywhere.
Yes, I was
Not
thinking the same
limited.
thing.
No, you're not limited to one city, one place. You've got the entire world. If you've got process in place and as you may call it, red tape of payments, etc., all that stuff, you can pretty much hire talent anywhere. So
Absolutely,
it's
you're absolutely right. I mean, my team right now, we're spread out
Mhm.
all across the country, East Coast, Midwest, West Coast. In fact, only myself and my project manager are in Atlanta. We had a design. One of my designers was in Atlanta for a period of time, but she moved abroad. But outside of that, I mean, we're all over the place. So
Yeah,
and it's been a true blessing to be able to just pull talent from anywhere, wherever they live, and relocation isn't a second thought. So they're able to
exactly.
work with us just as easy as they could work with anyone else.
Exactly. And it's quite mostly true for remote capable jobs. I call them as remote capable because you can work remotely. And like you said, constructions really you can't do remote work, right? Fire, first responders, etc. That's not possible. But that's maybe in the future with the technology, advancement of technology, some jobs may become more remote capable versus they are today.
Absolutely.
What is one piece of advice you'd give to leaders about fostering a positive organization culture?
Um, so I would say leaning into authenticity and individuality, which it kind of relates to some of the things I was talking about already. But that authenticity and individuality rather than like a cookie cutter process.
Yeah,
So for example, um, let's say annual reviews. For large companies, you have these annual reviews, and a lot of times there might be these surveys, these questionnaires that you have to fill out. You have to answer these questions. It's multiple choice, but there might be a couple areas where you type in your additional thoughts, and it has to be submitted by a certain type of date. So it's very formalized, very structured, and I think for some folks that's not really the best way for them, right? Or maybe
yeah,
not even the best time. Maybe there's a different maybe a month later is when they would have had more to say, or a month before, or something like that. So really being able to just allow the team to provide their thoughts and their feedback at any time, You could still have
Yes.
maybe a semi-formal way of taking that in, but really just being like, hey, like whatever way works for you. Like if you just want to get on a call and talk about it, that's fine. If you want to send me an email, that's fine. If you want to, whatever the case may be. So,
Yeah.
really leaning more into that. And I know it's obviously the size of the organization makes a difference, right? If you have a large corporation with hundreds or thousands of employees, telling everybody that your manager or your manager's manager is going to be available for you to just call whenever you want and all that. I understand. That can be a challenge, but any way that folks can find a way to lean into that to that flexibility where you allow people to really to thrive in their space and the way that they think and the way that they operate. I think it's better for the team.
Yeah, fair enough. Tell me a little bit more about the authenticity part of it.
Yeah, sure. So, I find that when someone feels that, again, just sticking with the like the annual review example, if someone feels like this is like a quiz, it's some type of an exam, it's like an assessment, they might it just feels less authentic to them. It's not, they don't know who's reviewing it. It's, they might not even be in the mood to do it then. It's just so it's overly structured and can in some for some folks compromise maybe their headspace that they're in when
Fair
they're
enough.
responding to that.
Yeah, fair enough.
And so allowing them to really just be authentic, like, hey, when you're ready, send me your thoughts and let me know. Even if you have a way to send it anonymously, if you want to provide a way for your team to do that, like, hey, you could
Yeah.
send anonymous feedback this way if you don't want to, tie yourself to your thoughts. Just find a way to do
Yeah, no, absolutely. In fact, I was in today morning, I was in a webinar. I attended a webinar about performance reviews and performance feedback. And one of the conversation point was the fact that some organizations are still doing annual reviews, which in my head, I'm absolutely, I don't know if I can use the word flabbergasted, because you wouldn't, there is so many issues with just an annual review. You need to have reviews in frequent cycles, once a week, maybe twice a week, once a month, or maybe as many times as more, because there's a whole lot of changes that is happening, and it's the world that we live in today. It's not just the static. It's so dynamic that we want to be there for our team as much as possible and provide them the right feedback at the right time, give them it's like an insight to make corrections in the way they want to move. It's being more agile.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And in fact, as you were talking, it reminded me of some other things that I always found, like you use the word flabbergasted. I was flabbergasted when I saw these type of examples. So some organizations may have, and with good intention, I'm not knocking their intention, but with good intention, so they might have like these core principles that they like, these are the seven things that we stand for in this organization, and then they'll fold that into their annual review. Like,
Yeah.
read our core principles again, study them, and then provide your feedback and how they relate to these core principles, and how it's kind of like that is if, have that option for someone whose mental model really works that way and really aligns so rigidly with these things, these core principles that the organization operates in. But for a lot of folks that might not be the case. Like, why not just allow people to be like, hey, like, these are just my thoughts here. These are specific examples of how what I think is working well, and what I think, and where I think has room for improvement, as opposed to like making people feel very boxed in, that it's got to be done this particular way and done and submitted on this particular date. It's just so it's just the antithesis of authenticity as far as I'm concerned.
Absolutely. And just to take a little dig on the number 7, that's just too much.
Yeah.
If you can just make it limited, like 3 maybe. So I think I've got my principles are people centric culture and complexity, embrace complexity, and use an agile mindset to manage complexity. These are my organization's principles. That's limited.
Yep.
It's just the way that you it's so daily way there's daily communication about, okay, this is what I did, and then there's reward systems around recognition that, oh great, this is the way you did it, it aligns very well with our principles, so fantastic, thank you. It's just a simple reminder, and it helps create that kind of work environment where people will be receptive to, okay, this is the way my behavior is rewarded, and I think I will do this more often versus thinking about some other things. So
Exactly.
but I get your point. Seven is just too much, boxing them into this, but we need to allow our people to be uh, agile, right?
Absolutely.
All right, time for some rapid fire questions. What book do you recommend the most?
I would say Rich Brand, Poor Brand, by David Breyer. You know, first of all, I like the title. You know, it's kind of play off of Rich Dad Poor Dad.
Yeah.
You know, so I kind of like that. Plus, it talks about branding, which obviously I'm in the space of. So that's another surface level reasons, but also
Mhm.
just really as far as like the content of what it talks about. The things that it really takes to build a healthy culture, a healthy company culture, and
Mhm.
how that relates to branding, because branding isn't just about and again, in my industry, we are helping other industries build a brand, but you also need to have an internal brand
Yeah.
for your business itself, right? You want your company, your team to embrace a particular identity, something that they're excited about, and something that kind of uh, bleeds throughout the process and the work and all of that.
Gotcha. Wait, I think I might have to add this to my list. To be honest with you, you're right. Absolutely. If you talk about organization culture and the way that one of the notable authorities on organization culture, Edgar Sheehan, talks about the culture in 3 levels: artifacts, espoused beliefs and values, and basic assumptions, the culture DNA. Artifacts could be all your products and your banners, and that's the way you've designed it. That's artifacts. The espoused beliefs could be from, and your basic assumptions are the ones which are guiding your brand strategies as well. So brand is a product or of your organization culture. Very well said. All right. What's one thing people would be surprised to know about you?
Um, so this example sounds completely unrelated, but it actually does relate a little bit to business in general. But so oddly, I find skydiving very peaceful. So I think some people find that kind of odd. And so the reason for that is, first of all, I didn't think this was going to be the case before I actually went. But I went skydiving. I was nervous about it because I'm not particularly fond of heights, which is part of the reason why I went, because I was like, okay, I'm going to overcome my fear of heights, and what better way to do that than to jump out of a plane? So when so up until I was ready to jump out, I was like, oh man, this is I'm starting to regret putting myself in this position. But after jumping out of the plane, there was like maybe 45 seconds of free fall. That was kind of like, wow, I'm actually I just jumped out of a plane. Then they pull the chute, and then there's like 5 or 6 minutes of just peacefully,
Gliding.
slowly floating to the ground. And in that during that time, I was thinking about it. I was like, wow, the majority of this experience is a slow, peaceful, um, you know, thing, as opposed like the fast free falling is only a small piece of it. And when people hear skydiving, all they're thinking about is why would you're jumping out of a plane, you're falling towards the ground at a certain rate of speed. But the fact of the matter is, most of it is actually more of a serene type of experience. So
Wow.
the reason I think about that example is because I think in business that's an important thing, to be able to just be like, hey, I'm not particularly comfortable with this, but there's a reason that I should do it, so I'm just going to do it anyway. And who knows? Maybe it won't be as bad as I think. And sometimes, public speaking is an example of that. A lot of people are terrified of public speaking. They don't want to get on stage. They don't want to speak at events. They don't want to they don't want to do podcast interviews or anything like that. And
Yeah.
but it's important. And sometimes you just got to face your fears and do what's necessary.
In all essence of things, the only thing that we have in control is our actions.
Absolutely.
And when we act, things will just fall in place. So it just makes us better.
Absolutely.
All right. So how can our listeners connect with you?
Sure. So our website is vajdesign.com. That is where you can kind of take a look at our work, some of our case studies. You can connect with us, maybe sign up for one of our packages, or schedule a consultation with me, and we kind of walk through your needs and how we can best support you. I'm also on LinkedIn. Victor Jacques, Jacques. You can find me there. Facebook, we're on VAJ Design, and Instagram, VAJ Design as well, or VAJ _ design, I believe, on Instagram.
Fantastic. Thank you. Well, there you have it, folks. Another great episode and conversation with Victor. Thank you so much, Victor. It was an honor to host you, and I appreciate the conversation.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate your time. Thanks for having me.
All right.